It was the Quinn Hughes Bowl in Vancouver. It didn't go great for the Canucks either. Meanwhile, the Leafs win a backup goalie duel to extend their strong run in their last 9 points in their last 5 games. So the Leafs back. Plus, what is life like without Logan Cooley? Not fun, apparently. Plus, we'll make some stops in Seattle and Calgary to see if anybody was having fun out there. All that and more tonight on Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Good morning or good evening, hockey fans, wherever it is you're joining us from. Thanks for being with us. Welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, your teams featured every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of all the night's action in the NHL during the regular season and the playoffs, whether it's one game, 16, or everything in between. We're here for you with the latest. We are available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Alex Wiederspiel. I write about hockey for Yard Barker. I hang here on Locked On NHL Game Night as well. I'm solo again tonight. And glad to be with you guys after a good night in the league, an interesting night in the league, I think might be the more accurate way of putting it. A lot of intrigue in the league this evening, and we'll get right into it. It was Quinn Hughes extravaganza. Detroit, Vancouver, there have been ongoing rumors about the possibility of the Detroit Red Wings being involved in the Quinn Hughes chase right now. Whether that chase, how real it is, we still don't really know because we're not really 100% sure on Vancouver's intentions at the moment. I think everyone's pretty aware of where this is headed eventually, especially if Vancouver continues to play the way they have. And this was another one that they weren't very good. There's really no nice way of putting it. They had their moments, but we'll get into the reason they lost here in a second. 4-0, the final in this one. James Van Riemsdyk scores a goal. The Andrew Kopp scores a goal. Nate Danielson, the rookie, scores a goal. And then an empty netter for Dylan Larkin. And I will say, there's nothing to be gained from winning the territorial battle, the expected goals battle, if you will. But if you're going to allow the opposition to own your crease, the public models don't matter. Before we get more into that, let's give Brian Fisher a chance to weigh in from Locked On Detroit Red Wings.
As John Gibson earns his first shutout as a Detroit Red Wing, the struggling netminder finally delivers in a game where Detroit really needed him. He faced 39 shots in this hockey game. A game I don't think Detroit played terribly, but when it came to just puck management, Vancouver was all over it, and he bailed them out early and often. There was a save in the second period in particular when Vancouver had their first power play, down 1-0. He made an incredible toe save, pad save on Jake DeBrusk, and he was like that all night long. John Gibson won the Detroit Red Wings this game. This 4-0 victory ensures that they have a 5-game point streak and are now first in the ever-tight Atlantic Division. Goals as well in this game from Andrew Kopp. You had another JVR goal at 6 and 7. Depth scoring was fantastic. Listen for more on Locked On Red Wings.
All right, so we thank Brian there. The one thing I want to push back on for a second here is I do agree that the Red Wings didn't play a bad game, and there were certainly points in this one when Vancouver was all over Detroit's bad puck management. But two things occurred in this game. One, Vancouver never made Detroit pay. Two, once Detroit got a lead, Vancouver was chasing the game the entire time, and they weren't chasing it in a particularly responsible way. And three, all three of the goals with a goalie in the net not a defenseman to be found anywhere in front of the crease. Absolutely bananas. Now, the JVR goal is the most defensible of them. Puck took kind of a weird bounce, got to JVR. He makes a great stick play and then eventually scores, but he was all alone in front of the net. Andrew Kopp, all alone in front of the net. I saw one descriptor of that tonight as should have been described as a literal expected goal of 1. And the same thing with Nate Danielson. Just he peels off, and there is nobody. And I'm not saying like, oh, like, there were guys, they were close, but no. There is nobody around the net. It's Nate Danielson allowed to camp out in front of the goal crease. Just completely allowed to camp out there. All 3 of those goals, the exact same spot. Slightly different ways, the way that they occurred, but the exact same spot all 3 times. And then Dylan Larkin throws in the empty netter at the end. It does not matter if you win, if your small details are good, but your large details are not particularly detailed. What does it matter? You can't lose high leverage plays like that once, twice, 3 times and expect to win, especially not if you're Vancouver, who is officially now, at this moment in time, 25 points in 30 games. They have taken over the worst record by points percentage in the league. They have the best odds at winning the number 1 overall pick for whatever that is worth at the moment. And yeah, I don't have much nice to say about Vancouver tonight. Again, there were moments that were good, but you can't make those levels of mistakes. Again, high leverage mistakes are what matter in hockey. And so Money Puck had their deserve to win a meter tonight. And at one point, Vancouver trailing in this game 3-0 was a 66% on the deserve to win-o-meter. I love Money Puck. I think it's a great website. Lots of excellent data to be found there. The deserve to win-o-meter is not one of those things. And most certainly there was no deserve to win for Vancouver tonight. You just simply can't, you cannot allow the same mistake to happen 3 times. Can't do it and expect to win. Let's move on to Toronto and Tampa Bay in a game a lot less happened in. Morgan Riley did score. It was a fair bit of nothing after that. Dennis Hildeby, who was Toronto's number 4 goalie, he is up because of injuries to both of their goaltenders, Anthony Stolarz, who is still not skating, and Joseph Woll, who is expected to be back, I think, reasonably quickly. I think there's a pretty decent chance he's back in the next week or so. But Dennis Hildeby outduels Jonas Johansson in the battle of backup goalies. A late empty netter for Austin Matthews gets Toronto to 2. They win this one 2-0. Tampa actually won the quantity battle in this one, similar to what we were talking about with Detroit. This wasn't quite as lopsided as that one. Tampa won the quantity battle. Toronto won the quality battle. So Tampa wins the quantity battle, I should say. Toronto wins the quality battle. Now, the good news for the Lightning, they are getting Braden Point back. They're getting Nikita Kucherov back into the lineup. It's one of those weird truths that sometimes when guys come back after long layoffs, a couple of things occur. They can be a little bit rusty, but also working their way. Now, this is, I would say, less true of a team like Tampa, but sometimes when you haven't played in a while, working your way not just back into game shape, but working your way back into the groove of the way the team is playing can be difficult as well. Andrei Vasilevsky also out for Tampa. He is expected to return to action at some point during their upcoming road trip. Tampa has lost 4 in a row all of a sudden, so keep an eye on that. However, still battling at the top of the division, though things certainly getting more interesting after tonight with Detroit getting a win. And, of course, last night, Florida getting a win. That Atlantic division is the absolute definition of mush right now, and I love it. This is the whole league, essentially, is mush. Outside of the top 2 in the Western Conference, everything else in the Western Conference is mush right now. So it's not just the Atlantic. It's everywhere. There's no question about that. All right, we're going to go ahead and take our first break. I guess the big question is what's next for the Mammoth without Logan Cooley out indefinitely. First up was a home date with the LA Kings, and it was a struggle at times, though some signs of life in the third period. We'll talk about that, as well as the rest of the games on the slate coming up in our next segment here on Locked On NHL Game Night. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. 48 teams for the first time ever as well. It's going to be absolutely massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is kind of the hard part. That's why the Gametime app is so clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open up, buy tickets the moment that they hit the app. It puts the power in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Pick a game, tap a section, have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. Prices include fees up front, which I'm a big fan of. No last second surprises at checkout. Listen, when you're working on a budget, that's important. Alerts for teams and matches make it easy to grab tickets the moment they drop instead of missing out. Take the guesswork out of buying your World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event in the future with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Gametime. All right, so let's talk about Eddie Garcia's favorite team, the LA Kings. And man, I was so low on the Kings when the season started. They looked exactly like what I thought they were going to look like, right? They had a very slow start to the season. We've even heard a rumbling or two about the possibility of dumping the coach, right? So the Kings have run, I would say the Kings have run the gamut of this season. And again, it's not like you look at them, they're 13, 8, and 7. It's like we're talking about an elite record for Jim Hiller's squad, but they've done enough. They've gotten back into the season. They are very much in the playoff race. They're in a playoff spot right now. And 14, 8, and 7 now, right after tonight's win over Utah. The Kings jumped out all over in the first period. The Logan Cooley-less Utah Mammoth. Goals from Adrian Kempe. He had a multi-point night. Joel Armia, he had a multi-goal night. Kevin Fiala assisted on both, multi-point night there. Dylan Gunther got a power play goal in the second to make it 2-1. Then Anze Kopitar would score his 6th of the year to make it 3-1 in the third. Clayton Keller, the captain for Utah, struck back with a terrific tic-tac-toe play. It's 3-2 in the third, and then Armia scored into the empty net for his 2nd of the night. At that point, Los Angeles had the win. They are surging, and the question now, Utah, who is NHL 500, but they are below 500 at 14, 14, and 3, but they're NHL 500. I guess the question is what to do without Logan Cooley. I think there are some real serious questions. If Logan Cooley is out for a while, some real serious questions about this team. They have not padded enough points at this point. And to be honest with you, even before the injury, Logan Cooley hadn't really looked himself since taking that kind of scary, what had looked like a neon knee, turned out to be like a neon hip. He hadn't really looked himself in my mind. But now that he's out indefinitely after an injury that he apparently suffered the other night, the question is going to be, one, how long? And two, does Utah in year 2, trying to still build a fan base here, do they go out and get a player because they say, we want to make the playoffs this year? We're not giving up because Cooley is out, and we got to bank points for when Cooley gets back. And again, the question is, when is that going to happen? We'll have more on that coming up in our next segment. We got a little game we're going to, well, I'm alone here. We're going to play. Let's jump over to Seattle, and West Coast was not best coast in this one. Minnesota takes down the Kraken 4-1. The Wild don't give up a 5-on-5 goal in this one. The only Seattle goal coming on the power play. Joel Eriksson X scores. He has a 3-point night for Minnesota. Marcus Johansson, Kirill Kaprizov, Vlad Tarasenko all score. Jordan Eberle with that lone Kraken goal. Philip Gustafsson stops 23 of 24. And the Kraken now with just 1 point in their last 6 games. So that's a bit of a developing story there. But there is another developing story out of this game. Seth Topol of Locked On Minnesota Wild has all the details on the banged up Minnesota walking wounded.
Snapped their 2-game losing streak to 2 of the worst teams in the NHL, but it came at a price. A 4-1 win for the Minnesota Wild, but there were as many Wild players that exited this game early as there were goals on the board. The Wild lost in no particular order: Matt Boldy, Matt Zuccarello, Ryan Hartman, Nico Sturm, and Jake Middleton in this game. Zuccarello left early after a high hit from Vince Dunn. All the others left at some point throughout the game. Good note, though, Kirill Kaprizov snapped a cold spell with an empty net goal to help seal the victory. And Vladimir Tarasenko scored his third goal of the season. He has certainly been cold through the early part of the year. We'll see if that goal can get him going. For more on the Minnesota Wild and for injury updates on all of the aforementioned players, make sure to follow Locked On Wild wherever you listen to your podcasts.
With that loss, Seattle is now 11-10-6. Their overtime loss is doing a lot of heavy lifting for them at the moment. Here's something worth noting, and you guys, if you're avid followers of the program, it's the same story every single time. I want to know what the flow of the game was like when it was tied. I want to know what the flow of the game was like when you're ahead, right? I want to know how you played in those moments. So if you're the better team when tied, if you're the better team when playing with a lead, most nights, almost every night, you're going to win. Minnesota tonight in the second period, where they scored one goal, by the way, Minnesota tonight in the second period, they outchanced Seattle, high danger, according to Natural Stat Trick, 5-2. The more important number there, that only allowing Seattle 2. Ahead in the third period, Seattle just one high danger chance in the third period, and that's at all situations, at all strengths, just one high danger chance. So Minnesota, despite all those injuries, completely stifling Seattle in this one. Not a good sign for the Seattle Kraken. We've talked about and mentioned that we're concerned about Seattle's ability to create opportunity in the past. That appears to still be the case here in this one. That said, I don't think Seattle had the absolute worst performance of the night. Certainly, we talked already about the Vancouver Canucks. There is one other team, though, that could maybe give them a run for their money. Let's talk about the Calgary Flames and the Buffalo Sabres. 7-4, the final in this one. And there were some interesting tidbits that came out of this game. And if you just listened to the post-game coverage of this one, and I'm going to bring up the goal scorers here in just a moment. Apologies. But if you listen to just the post-game coverage in this one, boy, they were on the Calgary side. They were rough on Buffalo tonight in a way I haven't seen a home broadcast crew be that rough on a road broadcast crew before. It was brutal. 7-4, the final in this one. Let me go over a couple of the quotes. Every time Buffalo got within a goal, they imploded. That was probably the one that stood out to me the most. The thing that I also noted was that this is very inverted. Buffalo has a ton of talent. They have not figured out any way to make this into a cohesive culture. A ton of talent, and they just cannot find a way to make this into anything resembling cohesion, structure on ice. Calgary, I have said repeatedly, talent's not there. It's a personnel issue in Calgary, but they play hard every night. The coaching is good. This is a Calgary team that simply just doesn't have enough of what they need to compete. But on a night like tonight, at home against a Buffalo team lacking in that cohesion we're talking about, Igor Sharangovich and Rasmus Andersson opened the scoring in the first period. Then a wild second period, back and forth. This one went 3-3 in the second period in total goals, but 5-3 going into the third period. Tage Thompson would score on the power play. Owen Power scored. Rasmus Dahlin scored in this one. Jonathan Huberdeau scored. Nazem Kadri and Jan Kuznetsov scored. And then 5-3, Alex Tuck cuts it to 5-4, and that's when the implosion occurs. Calgary gets back-to-back empty netters. They win this one 7-4. And again, that was the line of the night, because it's true. Every time I switched back to this game, Buffalo had just found a way to get close, and they would immediately implode. And that was the story. That was the story of the night. That was the story of the night in the second period. It was the story of the night in the third period. This is a Buffalo team that, and this was noted on the broadcast, this has been noted by colleagues of mine, and I think it's time to talk about this, but the concept of the perpetual rebuild machine. And the perpetual rebuild machine has been utilized in a number of places. no more so than Buffalo. And you can make the argument that they haven't always been rebuilding during this stretch of 15 years, what appears to be their 15th consecutive season missing the playoffs. They maybe haven't always been rebuilding during that span of time, right? Like at some point, they also got into this mindset where they said, all right, we've got a group of guys that we think we can win with. They just didn't win with those guys. That's happened, I would say, twice. But the argument here is that when you strip it down to the very bone, as Buffalo has done, and I think this is their technically third rebuild or third iteration of the Sabres since the initial teardown. So they've torn it down twice, if that makes sense. I think it's going to happen again if things don't change. The Lindy Ruff hire looks like a disaster. And you've got talent, Tage Thompson, Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin, Alex Tuch, Josh Stone. These are talented players. These are talented guys. And I said it from the beginning. I didn't mind the theory or the philosophy behind the JJ Peterka trade. I didn't have an issue with that. But Peterka not wanting to stay in Buffalo with all that other young talent is in and of itself pretty alarming. All right, we're going to go ahead and hit a break. When we come back, it's the holiday season now. We can officially say that. It's December, as we're recording this, it's December 9th here on the East Coast. And we could say it's the holiday season. So it is the holiday season. So the question is, the holiday season is all about belief. So the question is, do you believe? I want to know, of course, in the comments in the YouTube video, whether or not you believe, but we'll talk more about that coming up on the other side of this break. Back here in a moment on Locked On NHL Game Night. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads, money lines that adjust instantly, player props that update as guys heat up. You can bet the next touchdown scorer, the drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. Now, if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com, place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, so we're going to wrap the show with a very simple question, and I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section. We had 10 teams in action tonight, and the question is, do you believe? And I don't mean, do you believe that your team is a playoff contender? And if you do believe that, and we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks, well, I've got some beachfront property in Montana to sell you, or in West Virginia, where I actually am, to sell you. The question is, do you believe the team when they tell you who they are? So let's start. We're going to go down the 10 teams that played tonight. And I'm going to tell you where I'm at on all 10 of these teams. So do I believe the Buffalo Sabres when they tell me who they are? They are back in last place in the Atlantic Division. And I have so tried to buy in on Buffalo this year on multiple occasions, even though I was incredibly skeptical coming into the preseason. I bet against them in almost every manner of speaking. And they have lost 3 straight to open up this road trip, 0 points on a 6-game road trip out west. And it only gets harder as they go on the back end of a back-to-back tomorrow night at the Edmonton Oilers. So right now, I believe that Buffalo is exactly who they say they are. The Calgary Flames, I do not believe the Flames are who they say they are in a certain respect. I believe they're not very good. I believe they're not the most talented team in the world, but they play well above their skis. And despite the fact that they haven't been very good this year, they are officially out of the basement in the Pacific Division despite that nightmarish start. So I do not believe the Calgary Flames are quite the as bad as they seem to want us to believe they are. Some of that has to do with the fact that the goaltending has just not been right and there's not enough scoring on this team. But they got enough scoring tonight for not necessarily Dustin Wolf's best game. So I say this. I do not believe that Calgary is exactly who they say they are. I don't believe they're necessarily the second worst team in the Pacific Division. They are showing signs of life that I would not have expected. Seattle, it has been it's been a problem. 1 point in 6 games. Yeah, I believe exactly who Seattle is telling us that they are right now. The Kraken, the concern was always going to be similar to Calgary. One, do they have enough offense? And I do think they've got more scoring talent, certainly, than Calgary does. But the goaltending is as big a concern as Calgary's, in the sense of the actual room itself. But Calgary, the upside is obviously much higher. So, yeah, I believe Seattle is exactly who they're telling us they are, as they are fading and fading fast. Minnesota, I'm buying in on Minnesota. I believe them when they say who they are. The Minnesota Wild, they're not a perfect team, but they've got good goaltending. They've got depth up and down the lineup, and they are winning in spite of injuries. A lot of injuries, I might add. They have really piled up the injuries here. Seth Topol has more on that. We talked with Seth earlier. The Utah Mammoth, another team where I believe what they're telling me. The Mammoth, I didn't think they looked great with a healthy Logan Cooley. They didn't look great with a healthy Logan Cooley. He had these sort of explosive nights, but I'm starting to wonder if Utah doesn't address this, if Utah does not go out and get somebody to help things out, particularly on the back end, because they are having issues in goal. They might need to create better structure around. But if Utah doesn't go out and get somebody, they might be the Ducks from a couple of years ago. You remember when the Ducks had that crazy hot start out of nowhere, the Trevor Zegras Ducks, and then they fell back to earth as expected. Utah now has lost, doing the math in my head, 6 of their last 8 games. They have, I'm not sure they have points in any of those losses. They do not. So they are 2-6-0 in their last 8. I am buying that is who Utah might actually be. The Kings, they're going to do me dirty here. The LA Kings, I am not prepared to buy who the Kings are telling us that they are. I do not yet believe in the LA Kings. Eddie Garcia probably would have a thing or two to say to me. The Kings have won 2 straight, but they have a lot of points coming in extra time, in the extra session, that have maybe propped them up a little bit. I'm not sure I'm 100% bought in on the LA Kings at the moment. Do I believe, again, this is the season of belief, do I believe in Tampa and what they're showing us? I don't believe. The 4-game losing streak, I think, is a mirage. Tampa has been one of the most banged up teams in the league. The fact that they were able to work their way from worst to first in the division is insane, with how many injuries they've been dealing with. Again, going to beat the drum on this. John Cooper should absolutely be a finalist for Coach of the Year if Tampa winds up continuing on the trajectory that they're on as a whole this season, heading towards a playoff spot despite all the man games lost. Toronto, 4 of 5, 9 out of 10 possible points in their last 5 games. Things looked really bad in Toronto for a period there, but for the fact that the group got healthy as the goaltending got unhealthy, and the group has really carried them. The goaltending's been certainly adequate. I think I might be buying what Toronto is selling once again. Vancouver, yes, I am buying 100% that Vancouver has told us who they are. The one thing I'm not sure about is, does Vancouver know who they are? And when does this Quinn Hughes trade happen? Because it has got to occur. They have got to rip. I've written about this multiple times for Yard Barker. They got to rip that Band-Aid off, man. He is not staying. From my perspective, that dude is so not staying. If he is, if you think you can still convince him, great. But I trade him now, because here's the thing. New Jersey can leverage play you if you want to just do the trade with New Jersey. But if you say to a playoff team who wants 2 cracks at him right now, say, hey, we'll retain a bunch of money on Quinn Hughes and you'll get him for 2 playoff runs, that's worth a lot in my mind. That's very similar to the Ryan McDonough trade that the Rangers messed that trade up in a number of ways. But theoretically, in this scenario where this guy's definitely not staying, makes some sense to me to give this a shot. And finally, Detroit, they win 4-0 tonight, and Detroit's been tough, man, because I picked the Detroit Red Wings to finish 3rd in the division, and a lot of folks thought that was a little crazy. That was a little nuts. And they're battling. They are battling. They're in the middle of this sort of mushy race in not just the division but the conference as well. They have points in their last 5 games. Correction. They're 3-0-2 in their last 5 games. I buy the Detroit Red Wings are exactly who I thought. I believe in the Detroit Red Wings in the sense that I believe that they are a playoff team who right now, with all the mistakes they're making, don't look to me like they're going to go beyond the first round of the playoffs. But I think that playoff drought, if it doesn't end this year, oh boy, I think it's got to end in Detroit this year. All right. On that note, I want to hear, do you believe, again, this is the season of belief. We believe in Santa Claus. Do you believe in what the team is telling you? Let us know in the YouTube comments. If you want complete coverage of your favorite NHL team, there is a Locked On NHL Team podcast and YouTube show for you. We have one for every NHL team. And this show, Locked On NHL Game Night, is here for you each and every night of the regular season and playoffs, wrapping up the night in the NHL. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this show if you're watching on YouTube. We want to see your thoughts on tonight's games in the comment section, plus what we talked about at the end of the show there. Do you believe this team is who they tell you are based on recent results and overall results? Do you think they're telling you the truth, or is this a mirage for good or for bad? That'll do it for tonight's episode of Locked On NHL Game Night. I'm Alex Wiederspiel. Thanks for listening and for watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network now, featuring your teams every day.